The boardroom went silent the moment Gabriella Monroe slammed her portfolio onto the mahogany table, and every executive in that room knew they had crossed a line they should not have crossed. "You brought in a consultant." Her voice was ice and fire combined, her green eyes blazing as she stared down the board members who had made this decision without consulting her. "My department has increased efficiency by 30% in the last quarter alone, and you think we need fixing?" Richard Chen, the head of operations, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Gabriella, your department may be efficient, but the culture reports suggest there are some interpersonal issues that need addressing. We believe an outside perspective would be beneficial." "Interpersonal issues," she repeated flatly. "My team produces results. That's what matters in this company, or have we suddenly decided feelings are more important than the bottom line?" "Both matter," a deep voice said from the doorway, and Gabriella whipped around to see a man she had never seen before walking into her boardroom like he owned the place. He was tall, over 6 feet easily, with dark hair styled just professionally enough to be respectable but casual enough to suggest he did not spend too much time worrying about it. His suit was expensive. She could tell that immediately, tailored perfectly to his broad shoulders and athletic build. But what struck her most were his eyes, sharp, intelligent, and currently assessing her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. "And you are," she demanded, though she already knew, "Ethan Sullivan, the consultant your board hired to assess and improve your department's operations and culture." He extended a hand toward her, his expression neutral but not unkind. "I look forward to working with you, Miss Monroe." Gabriella looked at his hand like it was a snake. "I did not agree to this. Nevertheless, here I am." His hand remained extended, and the standoff lasted long enough that several board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Finally, Ethan lowered his hand, seemingly unbothered by the rejection. "I will be starting tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock sharp. I trust you will give me access to your team and your processes." "You trust wrong." Gabriella grabbed her portfolio from the table and turned to the board. "I am the CEO of this company. I built Monroe Luxury Hospitality from the ground up after my father died and left me with nothing but debt and a failing hotel chain. I turned it into a billion-dollar empire. My department does not need fixing, and I do not need some overpaid stranger telling me how to run my business." She stormed out before anyone could respond, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Behind her, she heard Ethan Sullivan speak again, his voice calm and measured. "She will come around. They always do." That only made her angrier. Back in her office, Gabriella paced like a caged lioness. Her assistant, Maria, poked her head in cautiously. "Everything okay, Miss Monroe?" "No, everything is not okay." Gabriella stopped pacing and pressed her palms against her desk, taking a deep breath. "They hired a consultant, Maria. A consultant to fix my operations department, the department I personally oversee." Maria winced. "I heard. Mr. Sullivan arrived this morning and has been setting up in the East Wing conference room." "Of course he has." Gabriella straightened and smoothed down her navy dress. "Find out everything you can about Ethan Sullivan. I want to know where he went to school, what companies he has worked for, what his success rate is. Everything." "Already done." Maria stepped inside and closed the door, pulling out her phone. "Ethan Sullivan, 34 years old, graduated top of his class from Harvard Business School. He started as a management consultant at McKinsey, then branched out on his own 5 years ago. His firm specializes in operational efficiency and organizational culture. He has worked with dozens of Fortune 500 companies, and his success rate is actually impressive. 92% of the companies he consults foresee measurable improvement within 6 months." Gabriella's jaw tightened. So he was not just some charlatan. He was actually good at what he did. That almost made it worse. What about his personal life? Single, no children. He owns a penthouse in Manhattan and a lake house upstate. Estimated net worth around $50 million, most of it from his consulting firm and smart investments. Maria paused. He also volunteers at a youth mentorship program every other weekend. Teaches business skills to underprivileged kids. Great. So he was successful, wealthy, and philanthropic. Gabriella hated him even more. Thank you, Maria. That will be all. After Maria left, Gabriella sank into her leather chair and stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Manhattan. She had not built this company by letting people undermine her authority. The board might have hired Ethan Sullivan, but she would make sure he understood exactly who was in charge here. The next morning, Gabriella arrived at her office at 6:30, a full hour and a half before Ethan was supposed to start. She wanted to brief her team before he got there, to make sure they understood their loyalty was to her, not to some outside consultant who would be gone in a few months. Except when she walked into the operations department on the 15th floor, Ethan Sullivan was already there. He was standing near the coffee station, talking casually with 3 of her senior managers. They were laughing at something he had said, completely at ease, and Gabriella felt a surge of possessive anger. These were her people. "Good morning, Miss Monroe," Ethan said when he spotted her. He had a coffee cup in his hand, looking infuriatingly comfortable. "I hope you do not mind. I wanted to get an early start, meet some of the team before the official workday began." "It is 6:30 in the morning," Gabriella said coldly. "Most of my team does not arrive until 8. I know. But I figured the really dedicated ones would be here early. I was right." He gestured to the 3 managers, who suddenly looked uncomfortable under Gabriella's sharp gaze. "David, Michelle, and Thomas were just telling me about the new inventory system you implemented last quarter. Impressive work." David, her head of logistics, gave her an apologetic look. "Mr. Sullivan was already here when I arrived at 6, Miss Monroe. I was just being polite." "Of course." Gabriella forced a smile that did not reach her eyes. "David, Michelle, Thomas, I need to speak with Mr. Sullivan privately." "I will catch up with you all at the morning briefing." They scattered quickly, and Gabriella waited until they were out of earshot before turning to Ethan. "Let me make something very clear, Mr. Sullivan. This is my company. These are my people. You are a temporary presence here, nothing more. I will cooperate with this evaluation because the board has mandated it, but do not mistake that cooperation for acceptance. I do not want you here, and I do not think we need you." Ethan took a slow sip of his coffee, his expression thoughtful. "I understand you are angry. That is a natural response when someone feels their authority is being challenged. Do not psychoanalyze me. I am not. I am stating a fact." He set his coffee cup down on the nearby counter. "But here is another fact, Miss Monroe. Your board did not hire me on a whim. They hired me because despite your impressive financial results, there are serious concerns about the sustainability of your current approach. High turnover rates, burnout complaints, tension between departments. You have built something remarkable, but you are driving people too hard, including yourself." "My turnover rate is within industry standards," Gabriella shot back. "Barely. And your burnout complaints are 30% higher than comparable companies." Ethan leaned against the counter, his posture relaxed but his gaze intense. "I am not here to undermine you. I am here to help you build something that lasts, not just something that looks good on quarterly reports. I do not need your help. Maybe not. But your employees do." He pushed off from the counter and walked past her toward the elevator. "I will be observing your morning briefing. Please carry on as you normally would. Pretend I am not even here." As if that were possible. Gabriella watched him go, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She had faced down hostile takeover attempts, navigated near bankruptcy, and rebuilt her family's legacy from ashes. She was not about to let Ethan Sullivan make her feel incompetent in her own company. The morning briefing was tense. Gabriella ran it the way she always did, efficiently and directly, going through each department's metrics and expectations for the week. She noticed Ethan sitting in the back of the conference room, a tablet in his hands, occasionally taking notes but mostly just watching. It was unnerving, like being studied by a particularly intelligent predator. After the meeting ended and her team filed out, Ethan approached her. "You run a tight ship." "Thank you," she said curtly, gathering her materials. That was not entirely a compliment. He waited until she looked up at him. "You did not ask a single question about how your team was doing, not one inquiry about challenges they might be facing or support they might need. It was all output, metrics, deadlines. That is what a business briefing is for." A business briefing should also be about supporting your people so they can deliver those results. Ethan crossed his arms. "When was the last time you had a one-on-one conversation with any of your direct reports that was not about work performance?" Gabriella bristled. "My relationship with my team is professional. We are not here to be friends." "No, but you are here to be human beings. That matters." Before she could respond, he continued, "I would like to schedule individual interviews with each member of your operations team. I promise confidentiality. Whatever they tell me will be used only to improve processes and culture, not to get anyone in trouble. And if I refuse, then I will report to the board that you are obstructing the evaluation they commissioned, and we can all have another awkward meeting about it." His tone was not unkind, but it was firm. "This is happening, Miss Monroe. You can fight me every step of the way and make it miserable for everyone, or you can work with me and maybe even learn something. Your choice." Gabriella wanted to throw something at him, or scream, or both. Instead, she took a deep breath and nodded once, sharply. "Fine. Maria will coordinate the interviews, but I want weekly updates on your findings." "Daily updates," he countered. "Every evening at 5, you and I will meet to discuss what I have learned and what I recommend." Transparency is important if this is going to work. "Daily," she repeated, hating the idea. But she also knew he was right about one thing: if she obstructed this process too obviously, the board would see it as weakness. "Fine. My office, 5 o'clock. Looking forward to it." He smiled then, a real smile that softened his features and made him look younger, more approachable. It caught Gabriella off guard, and she found herself noticing details she had not before. The small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. The fact that he had a genuinely nice smile. She shut down those thoughts immediately. Ethan Sullivan was the enemy. Well, maybe not the enemy, but certainly not someone she should be noticing in any capacity beyond professional. Over the next 2 weeks, Gabriella watched as Ethan conducted his interviews and observations. He was thorough. She had to give him that. He spoke with everyone from senior managers down to administrative assistants. He observed team meetings, shadowed employees during their daily tasks, and reviewed processes with a meticulous attention to detail that was both impressive and irritating. Their daily 5 o'clock meetings became a strange ritual. At first, they were contentious. Ethan would present findings that Gabriella would immediately defend or dispute. He would push back with data and specific examples, and she would counter with context and business rationale. But slowly, grudgingly, Gabriella started to see what he was seeing. "Your team is afraid of you," Ethan said one evening, 3 weeks into the evaluation. They were in her office, the Manhattan skyline glowing with lights behind them as dusk settled over the city. "Respect and fear are not the same thing," Gabriella replied, but her tone was less sharp than it would have been a week ago. "I agree, but they do not respect you out of fear. They respect your accomplishments, your intelligence, your drive. The fear is separate and it is causing problems." He pulled up a document on his tablet and turned it toward her. 12 people in your department told me they have ideas for improvements, but are too afraid to suggest them because they worry you will see it as criticism." Gabriella frowned, reading through the anonymous quotes. "I encourage innovation. You encourage results. That is different." Ethan set the tablet down. "When was the last time someone suggested an idea that contradicted your approach and you seriously considered it?" She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. He had a point. "I am open to good ideas, but you are the final arbiter of what counts as good. That creates a chilling effect." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask. I might not answer." "Why are you so afraid of letting people in?" The question hit harder than Gabriella expected. "I am not afraid. You are. I have been watching you for 3 weeks now, and I have seen you with your team, with the board, with everyone. You keep yourself at a distance. Controlled, professional, untouchable. Like if you show any vulnerability, everything will fall apart. That is not fear. That is leadership." But even as she said it, Gabriella felt an uncomfortable tightness in her chest. "When I took over this company, I was 26 years old. Everyone doubted me. The board, the investors, even some of my own employees. I had to be twice as good, twice as strong, twice as fearless just to be taken seriously. I did not have the luxury of showing weakness. And now," Ethan's voice was gentler, "you have proven yourself 100 times over. Monroe Luxury Hospitality is one of the most successful companies in the industry. Your net worth is over $2 billion. You are respected globally. When do you get to stop proving yourself?" Gabriella looked away out at the city lights. "I do not know." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan stood and walked to the window, standing a few feet away from her. "My father was a factory worker," he said quietly. "He worked 60-hour weeks his entire adult life, came home exhausted every night, and died of a heart attack at 53. I was 15. My mother had to work 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I learned early that security comes from success, and success comes from being better than everyone else." Gabriella turned to look at him, surprised by this glimpse into his past. "Is that why you became a consultant?" "Partly. I wanted to help people work smarter, not harder. I wanted to prevent other families from losing someone because they ground themselves down to nothing for a paycheck." He met her eyes. "But I also became obsessed with being the best, with proving I was worth something. With never showing weakness because weakness meant failure, and failure meant ending up like my dad." "What changed?" Gabriella asked, though she was not sure why she was engaging with this conversation. "I had a breakdown 5 years ago. Full-on panic attack in the middle of a presentation to a client. Ended up in the hospital, thought I was having a heart attack just like my father." Ethan's jaw tightened at the memory. Turned out it was anxiety and exhaustion. "I had been working 100-hour weeks for years, never taking time off, pushing myself constantly. The doctor told me if I did not change something, I would end up just like my dad, dead before 60. So you started your own firm." "So I started my own firm, and I completely changed my approach. I realized that sustainable success is not about grinding yourself into dust. It is about balance, about building systems that support people instead of consuming them." He looked at her intently. "That is what I see here, Gabriella. You have built something incredible, but you are running on fumes, and so is your team. Something has to change." It was the first time he had used her first name, and somehow that small intimacy shifted something between them. Gabriella felt her defenses weakening, and that scared her more than she wanted to admit. "I do not know how to be any other way," she said finally, the admission costing her something. "Then let me help you figure it out." Ethan stepped closer, and Gabriella was suddenly very aware of how tall he was, how he smelled faintly of coffee and something woodsy, how his presence seemed to fill the space between them. "That is what I am here for, not to tear you down but to help you build something better." Their eyes held for a beat too long, and Gabriella felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with business or evaluations. She stepped back quickly, breaking the moment. "It is getting late," she said, her voice more unsteady than she would have liked. "We should call it a night." If Ethan noticed her sudden retreat, he did not comment on it. "Same time tomorrow." "Yes, tomorrow." Gabriella turned away, busying herself with organizing papers on her desk that did not need organizing. She heard him gather his things and walk to the door, but then he paused. "For what it is worth," he said, "I think you are an extraordinary leader. You just need to trust yourself enough to let other people be extraordinary too." Then he was gone, and Gabriella was left alone in her office, staring out at the city and trying to ignore the way her heart was beating just a little faster than normal. The next few weeks brought a shift in their dynamic. Gabriella was still resistant to some of Ethan's suggestions, but she found herself listening more, considering his perspective more seriously. He was right about several things, she had to admit. Her team did need more support. Communication could be better. She could delegate more effectively. But more unsettling than the professional insights was the personal awareness growing between them. Gabriella started noticing small things. The way Ethan always made sure there was coffee ready before their 5 o'clock meetings because he had learned she often skipped lunch and was running on caffeine by late afternoon. The way he listened when she spoke, really listened, not just waiting for his turn to talk. The way his face lit up when he got excited about an idea, his usual measured professionalism giving way to genuine enthusiasm. She told herself it did not matter. He was a consultant. He would finish his evaluation, deliver his recommendations, and leave. Getting attached would be foolish. But then came the incident with the merger. Gabriella had been quietly negotiating a merger with a smaller luxury hotel chain for months. It would expand Monroe Luxury Hospitality's presence into the European market, a goal she had been working toward for years. The deal was close to closing when suddenly the other company's CEO, a man named Gregory Blackstone, started making unreasonable demands. Higher valuation, more control over operations, a larger share of future profits. "He is trying to squeeze us," Gabriella told Ethan during one of their evening meetings. She was pacing her office, furious and frustrated. "He knows how much I want this deal and he is using it as leverage." "Walk away," Ethan said simply. Gabriella stopped pacing. "What?" "Walk away from the deal. He is betting you wanted too much to pull out. Prove him wrong." "I have been working on this for 8 months. We have invested significant resources. Walking away now would mean all that effort was wasted. Sunk cost fallacy, you know better than that." Ethan stood and walked over to her. "The deal only makes sense if the terms are favorable. If he is demanding more than it is worth, then it is a bad deal, regardless of how much time you have invested. You have built your success on making smart decisions, not emotional ones. Do not let him bully you into a bad agreement because you are too proud to walk away." Gabriella stared at him, her mind racing. He was right. Of course he was right, but it was hard to let go of something she had wanted for so long. What if he does not budge? What if he lets the deal die? Then you move on and find a better opportunity. You are Gabriella Monroe. You do not chase deals, they chase you. Ethan's voice was firm, confident. Trust yourself. Trust your worth. Something about the way he said it, the absolute conviction in his eyes, made Gabriella feel stronger than she had in weeks. You really believe that? I really do, he smiled. Besides, I have seen your financials. You do not need this merger. You want it. There is a difference. The next morning, Gabriella called Gregory Blackstone and pulled out of the deal. He was shocked, tried to backtrack, offered to renegotiate. She politely but firmly declined and ended the call. 2 hours later, he called back and agreed to her original terms. She still walked away. You were right, she told Ethan that evening. He called back, accepted my terms completely. I still said no. Ethan raised his eyebrows. Why? Because you were right about something else too. I do not need that deal. I want to expand into Europe on my terms, not because some arrogant CEO tried to manipulate me into a bad agreement. Gabriella felt lighter than she had in months. It felt good, saying no, choosing myself. Good. Ethan's smile was warm, genuine. That is a big step. I could not have done it without you. The admission surprised her even as she said it. I mean that, thank you. Something shifted in Ethan's expression, a softness that had not been there before. You are welcome. They stood there in her office, the evening light casting long shadows across the floor, and Gabriella felt the air between them charge with something unspoken. She should step back, change the subject, maintain professional boundaries. Instead, she heard herself ask, "Do you want to get dinner?" Ethan blinked. Dinner. Yes, dinner, food, outside of this office. Gabriella felt suddenly nervous, like a teenager asking someone to prom. Unless you have other plans. No, no other plans. His smile widened. I would like that, a lot actually. They went to a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. It was so different from the sleek, expensive restaurants where Gabriella usually conducted business dinners that she felt oddly off balance. I have not been here in years, she said as they settled into a corner booth. I used to come here with my father before he died. Was he the one who taught you about the hotel business? Ethan asked. He tried. But honestly, he was not a very good businessman. Gabriella smiled sadly. He loved hospitality, loved making guests feel welcome, but he was terrible with finances and strategy. After he died and I saw the mess he had left behind, I almost sold everything. But I could not let his dream die completely, so I taught myself everything he had not. The numbers, the strategy, the ruthlessness you need to survive in this industry. That must have been lonely. Gabriella looked up, surprised by his insight. It is, I do not really have friends anymore. Everyone in my life is either an employee or a business associate. Even the people I date. She trailed off, realizing she had never admitted this out loud before. It never goes anywhere because I cannot let my guard down. I cannot be vulnerable. Why not? Because vulnerability is weakness, and weakness is how you lose everything. She took a sip of wine, trying to push down the emotions rising in her chest. My father was soft, vulnerable, trusting, and he died leaving me with debt and a failed business. I learned from his mistakes. Ethan was quiet for a moment, then he reached across the table and gently took her hand. The touch was unexpected, warm, and Gabriella's breath caught. Your father was not weak because he was vulnerable, Ethan said softly. He was human. And being human, feeling things, letting people in, that is not weakness. It is the bravest thing you can do. Gabriella looked down at their hands, his larger one engulfing hers, and felt tears prick at her eyes. When was the last time someone had held her hand? When was the last time she had let someone close enough to try? I do not know how to do that, she whispered. Yes, you do. You are doing it right now. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. You are letting me see you, The real you, not the CEO, not the boss, just Gabriella. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it, and she quickly wiped it away, embarrassed. But Ethan did not let go of her hand, did not look away, did not make her feel foolish for showing emotion. "I think I have been hating you because I was afraid," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "Afraid of what you would find if you looked too closely. Afraid you would see all my flaws and failures and confirm what I have always secretly worried, that I am not good enough, that I am going to lose everything just like my father did. Gabriella." Ethan's voice was firm, commanding her attention. "You are nothing like your father's failures. You are brilliant, driven, and incredibly capable. But you are also human, and you deserve to let yourself be human. You deserve to have people in your life who see all of you and love you anyway." Love. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Gabriella's heart was pounding now, her carefully constructed walls crumbling faster than she could repair them. "I think I have been hating you for another reason too," she said quietly. "Because from the moment you walked into that boardroom, you saw right through me. You saw past all my defenses, all my armor, straight to the scared, lonely person underneath, and that terrified me." "It terrified you, or it felt dangerous?" Ethan asked, his thumb stroking the back of her hand in slow, deliberate circles. "Both." Gabriella met his eyes. "Because somewhere in the last few weeks, I stopped hating you and started feeling something else entirely. Something I have not let myself feel in a very long time." "What do you feel?" His voice was low, intimate, like they were the only two people in the restaurant. Gabriella took a shaky breath. This was it. The moment of vulnerability she had been avoiding her entire adult life. She could retreat now, make a joke, change the subject, or she could be brave. "I feel like maybe I have been waiting for someone who could see the real me and not run away. Someone strong enough to challenge me, patient enough to wait while I figured myself out, and kind enough to care whether I ever did." She paused. "I feel like maybe that person is you." Ethan's eyes darkened with emotion. "Gabriella, I know this is complicated," she continued quickly. "You are a consultant. I am your client. You will be finishing your evaluation soon and moving on. But I needed to say it. I needed you to know that you have changed something in me, something I did not think could be changed." "Come here," Ethan said, sliding out of his side of the booth and pulling Gabriella up with him. Before she could ask what he was doing, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It was not a gentle, tentative first kiss. It was hungry, passionate, full of weeks of tension and unspoken longing. Gabriella melted into it, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. She had been kissed before, but never like this. Never in a way that felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff at the same time. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I have been falling for you since that first day in the boardroom when you looked at me like you wanted to throw me out a window. You were so fierce, so unapologetic, so completely yourself. I have spent the last month trying to convince myself it was just professional admiration, but I was lying to myself. I am crazy about you, Gabriella. Completely, stupidly crazy about you." Gabriella laughed, a real laugh that bubbled up from somewhere deep inside. "This is insane. We barely know each other. I know you well enough to know you are the most extraordinary person I have ever met." Ethan kissed her again, softer this time. "I know you take your coffee black, that you bite your lower lip when you are thinking hard about something, that you have a tell when you are nervous you twist your watch around your wrist. I know you care more about your employees than you let on, that you visit your father's grave every Sunday morning before anyone else is awake, and that you have not taken a real vacation in 6 years." "How do you know about the grave visits?" Gabriella asked, stunned. "I followed you one morning. Not in a creepy way, he added quickly. I came to the office early and saw you leaving, and I was curious. I watched you at his grave, and I saw how you cried, how you talked to him like he was still there, and I realized you were not the ice queen everyone thinks you are. You are just someone who has been protecting her heart for so long that you forgot you were allowed to open it. Gabriella felt tears spilling over again, but this time she did not try to hide them. I am scared, Ethan. I am so scared of losing control, of needing someone, of letting you in and having you leave. I am scared too, he admitted. I have spent years building walls just like you have, but I am willing to try if you are. I am willing to be vulnerable, to risk getting hurt, if it means I get to be with you. They stood there in the middle of the restaurant, holding each other, and Gabriella felt something fundamental shift inside her. She was still terrified. She still did not know how this would work. But for the first time in as long as she could remember, she wanted to try. Over the next month, Gabriella and Ethan navigated the complicated terrain of a relationship that started in the most unconventional way. They kept things quiet at first, not wanting to complicate the evaluation or create gossip, but anyone paying attention could see the change in Gabriella. She smiled more. She was more patient with her team. She actually took lunch breaks, usually with Ethan, where they would steal away to quiet cafes and talk about everything except work. Ethan's evaluation concluded with a comprehensive report that praised much of what Monroe Luxury Hospitality was doing while offering concrete suggestions for improvement. Better work-life balance initiatives, more transparent communication channels, leadership training that emphasized emotional intelligence alongside business acumen. The board was pleased. More importantly, Gabriella's team was excited about the changes. You did not have to be so complimentary in the report, Gabriella said one evening as they walked through Central Park, her hand tucked into his. It was October now, the leaves turning brilliant shades of gold and crimson. I was honest. You have built something remarkable. It just needed some fine-tuning. Ethan pulled her closer as a cool breeze swept through the trees. Besides, I have a reputation to maintain. Cannot have people thinking I go easy on my girlfriend. Girlfriend. Gabriella tested the word, liking how it sounded. I have not been anyone's girlfriend since college. Well, you are mine now. Get used to it. He kissed the top of her head. And before you ask, yes, I am finishing up my contract with your company. As of next week, I will no longer be your consultant, which means there is no conflict of interest. We can do this properly. Go on real dates, tell people, maybe even go away for a weekend together. A weekend away. Gabriella stopped walking and turned to face him. You mean like a vacation? That is generally what people do on weekends away, yes. I do not take vacations. You do now. Ethan wrapped his arms around her waist. I am taking you to my lake house upstate. 2 days of no work, no phones, no emails, just you and me and actual relaxation. Think you can handle that? Gabriella pretended to consider. I suppose I could try. Good, because I already booked it. He grinned at her mock outrage. Someone has to make decisions for you sometimes. Might as well be me. The weekend at the lake house was a revelation. Gabriella had forgotten what it felt like to just exist without an agenda. They slept in, made breakfast together, went for long walks around the lake. Ethan taught her how to fish, which she was terrible at but enjoyed anyway. They talked for hours about everything and nothing: childhood memories, favorite books, dreams for the future. On their last night there, they sat on the dock watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. Gabriella was tucked under Ethan's arm, her head on his shoulder, feeling more at peace than she could remember. I do not want to go back, she said quietly. Then we will come back. As often as you want. Ethan kissed her temple. This is not a one-time thing, Gabriella. I am in this for the long haul. She tilted her head up to look at him. How do you know? We have only been together a few months. Because I know. He cupped her face gently. I know you are it for me. I know I want to wake up next to you every morning. I know I want to support you and challenge you and love you for the rest of my life. I know it is fast, and maybe I should play it cool, but I am 34 years old and I have never felt this way about anyone. So yes, I know. Gabriella's eyes filled with tears, happy tears this time. I love you too. I think I started loving you the moment you called me out in that first meeting, even though I wanted to hate you for it. Hate is just fear of feeling something, Ethan said softly. You taught me that. I think you taught me that, actually. Then we taught each other. He kissed her, slow and deep, and Gabriella felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. When they returned to the city, they went public with their relationship. The reaction from Gabriella's team was overwhelmingly positive. Apparently, everyone had been hoping something would happen between them. The board was more cautious, but even they could not argue with the results. Gabriella was a better leader now, more approachable, more balanced, more human. And the company was thriving. Ethan moved more of his consulting work to remote so he could spend more time in New York. Eventually, 6 months into their relationship, he asked Gabriella if he could move into her penthouse. It was a massive step, one that would have terrified her a year ago. But now it felt right. I am not the easiest person to live with, Gabriella warned him as they unpacked his boxes. I work weird hours. I am controlling about how the kitchen is organized, and I have nightmares sometimes about the company failing. I snore occasionally. I am obsessive about keeping the bathroom clean, and I will absolutely eat your leftovers if you do not label them. Ethan grinned. I think we will survive. They did more than survive. They thrived. Gabriella found that having Ethan in her life did not make her weaker or less focused. If anything, it made her stronger. She had someone to lean on during tough times, someone to celebrate victories with, someone who believed in her even when she doubted herself. A year after they met, Ethan proposed. He did it simply, without fanfare, on a Sunday morning at her father's grave. Gabriella had brought flowers like she always did, and when she stood to leave, Ethan was on one knee. Your father would want you to be happy, he said, holding out a ring that was perfect, elegant, understated, timeless. I want to spend my life making sure you are. Marry me, Gabriella. She said yes through tears, and they stood there among the gravestones, kissing and laughing and crying all at once. Later, Gabriella could have sworn she felt her father's approval, like a warm breeze that wrapped around them both. The wedding was small and intimate, just close friends and family. Gabriella wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers. Ethan could not stop smiling. When they exchanged vows, Gabriella promised to let him in, to be vulnerable, to trust in their love. Ethan promised to always see her, really see her, and to never let her forget her worth. You have made me brave, Gabriella said during her vows, her voice thick with emotion. You have shown me that strength is not about building walls, it is about having the courage to let them down. I love you with everything I am, and I cannot wait to spend the rest of my life with you. There was not a dry eye in the room. Their honeymoon was 2 weeks at a private villa in Tuscany. No phones, no work, just them. They ate too much pasta, drank too much wine, made love under the Italian sun, and talked about their future. They wanted children, they decided. A family to build together. A legacy of love, not just business success. When they returned to New York, they began the process of truly merging their lives. Ethan joined Monroe Luxury Hospitality as the Chief Culture Officer, a new position created specifically for him. His role was to ensure the company maintained the human touch as it continued to grow. It was perfect, allowing him to do what he loved while supporting Gabriella's vision. 2 years after they married, Gabriella found out she was pregnant. She told Ethan over breakfast on a random Tuesday, her hands shaking as she showed him the test. He picked her up and spun her around their kitchen, laughing like she had just given him the greatest gift in the world. "We are having a baby. We are actually having a baby." "I am terrified," Gabriella admitted. "What if I am not a good mother? What if I am too busy, too focused on work, too?" "You are going to be an amazing mother," Ethan interrupted, setting her down and placing his hands on her still flat stomach. "You are strong and smart and so full of love, even if you spent years pretending you were not. Our kid is going to be so lucky." Pregnancy was harder than Gabriella expected. She was sick constantly in the first trimester, exhausted in the second, uncomfortable in the third. But Ethan was there for all of it, holding her hair when she was sick, rubbing her feet when they swelled, reading parenting books with an earnestness that made her fall in love with him all over again. Their daughter was born on a snowy December evening, 7 pounds and 4 ounces of perfect. They named her Elaine Rose Sullivan Monroe, after Gabriella's father and Ethan's mother. When the nurse placed Elaine in Gabriella's arms for the first time, she felt a love so overwhelming it took her breath away. "Hi, baby girl," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I am your mama. And I promise to love you and protect you and show you that being strong means being brave enough to feel everything." Ethan sat beside her on the hospital bed, his arm around her shoulders, staring at their daughter with wonder. "She has your nose. She has your eyes," Gabriella countered. "She is perfect," they said in unison, then laughed. Motherhood changed Gabriella in ways she never expected. She learned to delegate more at work, to set boundaries, to prioritize her family without guilt. Monroe Luxury Hospitality continued to grow and thrive, but now it was not her entire identity. She was also a wife, a mother, a woman who had learned that vulnerability was not weakness but the ultimate strength. Ethan was an incredible father, patient and playful and deeply involved. He took paternity leave, changed diapers without complaint, sang lullabies in his rumbling voice that made Elaine giggle. Watching him with their daughter, Gabriella sometimes had to pinch herself. This was her life now. This beautiful, messy, imperfect, perfect life. When Elaine was 2, they had a son. They named him Evan Michael, and he was the spitting image of his father. 2 children, a thriving business, a marriage built on trust and love and mutual respect. Gabriella had everything she never knew she wanted. One evening, when the kids were asleep and she and Ethan were curled up on the couch with glasses of wine, Gabriella found herself reflecting on how much had changed since that day in the boardroom when she had wanted to throw him out a window. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, noticing her smile. "How I hated you when we first met. How angry I was that the board hired you. How certain I was that I did not need anyone." She turned to look at him. "And how completely wrong I was about everything." Ethan tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You were not wrong about everything. You were right about a lot. You just needed to learn that needing someone is not a weakness. You taught me that." Gabriella kissed him softly. "You taught me that love is not something to fear, that letting someone in does not mean losing yourself. That the strongest thing you can do is choose to be vulnerable with someone worthy of it. And you taught me that success is not just about working hard, it is about building a life worth living." Ethan pulled her closer. "You taught me what it means to be truly happy, not just accomplished." They sat there in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of knowing someone completely. Outside, the city glittered with lights. Inside, their children slept peacefully. And in that moment, Gabriella felt a contentment so deep it made her chest ache. She had built an empire, yes. But more importantly, she had built a life. A life full of love and laughter and people who saw her for who she really was. A life where strength meant having the courage to feel everything, even when it was scary. "Thank you," she whispered to Ethan. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For seeing past all my walls and defenses. For teaching me that hate was just fear of feeling something." She kissed him again. "For loving me enough to wait while I figured that out." "Always," Ethan said, and she could hear the promise in that single word. A promise that had already lasted years and would last a lifetime more. Years later, when Gabriella looked back on her life, she would mark that day in the boardroom as the moment everything changed. The day a consultant was brought in to fix her department and ended up fixing her heart instead. The day she learned that being a great leader meant being brave enough to be human. The day she stopped running from vulnerability and started running toward love, because in the end, that was what it had all been about. Not quarterly reports or profit margins or proving herself to a board of directors. It was about opening her heart to the possibility that someone could see all of her, the good, the bad, the terrified, the fierce, and love her not despite those things but because of them. It was about learning that hate is just fear of feeling something, and that the moment you stop being afraid and let yourself feel everything, that is when your real life begins. And Gabriella Monroe, CEO, wife, mother, and once upon a time the loneliest person she knew, was living proof that it was never too late to learn that lesson. Never too late to let someone in. Never too late to choose love over fear. Her empire still stood, stronger than ever. But now it was just one part of a much bigger, much more important legacy. A legacy of love, built with a man who had walked into her life as a stranger and become her everything. A man who had shown her that the strongest walls were the ones you willingly took down for the right person. As she tucked her children into bed one night, Elaine asked her a question. "Mama, how did you and Daddy fall in love?" Gabriella smiled, thinking back to those early days of resistance and anger and slowly crumbling defenses. "Well, sweetheart, it started with me being very, very stubborn. And your daddy being very, very patient. And then what happened? Then I realized that being brave does not mean never being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway." She kissed Elaine's forehead. "Your daddy taught me that. He taught me that love is worth the risk." "I think Daddy is smart," Elaine declared. "I think so too." Gabriella looked over at Ethan, who was putting Evan to bed in the next room, and her heart swelled with so much love she thought it might burst. Very, very smart. Later that night, as she and Ethan lay in bed, his arms wrapped around her, Gabriella whispered into the darkness, "I am so glad the board hired you." Ethan laughed softly. "That is quite the turnaround from wanting to throw me out a window." "I still wanted to throw you out a window. I just also wanted to kiss you. Turns out both can be true." She turned in his arms to face him. "But seriously, I am glad they did not listen to me. I am glad they forced me to face the one thing I had been running from my whole life." "What was that?" "The possibility that I did not have to do everything alone, that I was allowed to need someone, that needing you would not make me weak, it would make me whole." She kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into it. "Thank you for being stubborn enough to stick around until I figured that out. Thank you for being brave enough to let me in." Ethan held her close, and Gabriella felt that familiar sense of peace wash over her. "I love you, Gabriella. Today, tomorrow, always." "Always," she echoed, and knew with absolute certainty that she meant it. Because this was what happily ever after really looked like. Not a fairy tale ending tied up with a perfect bow, but a real, messy, beautiful life built one brave choice at a time. A life where two people who had both built walls around their hearts found the courage to tear them down for each other. A life where hate transformed into love, fear transformed into trust, and loneliness transformed into belonging. And as Gabriella drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, surrounded by the life they had built together, she knew that every difficult moment, every wall she had to dismantle, every fear she had to face, had been worth it, because on the other side of fear was love. And love, as it turned out, was worth everything,